What's going on, everyone? Hunter and Sher back at Misfit HQ today, talking to you about learning how to handstand walk. Now, this progression is terrific because the only prerequisite I would say is you need to be able to support yourself upside down in a handstand hold against the wall. It doesn't need to be freestanding or anything like that, but if you can confidently support your own weight upside down for, at least 10-20 seconds without turning into kind of like shaking all over the place, then you can handstand walk. Plus, we're going to add a little bonus kind of advanced addition to the end of this video, so stick with us here. For handstand walking, what we need to do is get athletes as comfortable as possible with kind of the wall and then get you away from the wall quickly. Because if athletes, when you get really comfortable with the wall, then it kind of turns into a crutch and then you get intimidated about walking out in the open. So aside from the prerequisite of hold yourself upside down, you also need to be comfortable with the idea that you are going to fall. And that's just how it is. Set some gymnastics mats up to dampen that fall a little bit. Try to fall gracefully, but just expect that to happen. That's part of the learning process for this sort of thing. First things first is that handstand hold. And now when we talk about the handstand hold for a handstand walk, keeping the hands maybe a little bit closer together than, say, kind of the width of a mat for a handstand push-up. Different movement when we have really wide hands and we want to shift weight from one side to the other like we do in a handstand walk. If you're really wide in that base and you pick up that leg of the stool, you're just going to tip over. So when Sherb picks up, go ahead whenever you're ready. His hands are quite a bit closer than his handstand walk position. You'll also notice he's looking at his hands. So if he were handstand push-upping, he'd look back at the wall. Nope, we want to look at the hands for the handstand walk. You can kick down, relax a little bit. Okay? Once he's comfortable kind of holding himself upside down, maybe orienting to looking at the hands a little bit, kind of getting familiar with that vantage point, we can now start to shift the weight from one hand to the other. The way that he's going to do that, he's going to think about kind of shifting his hip over that supporting arm, but we're basically trying to shift our body weight over the supporting hand because, again, if we're just static, we remove one leg of the stool, we just tip over to that side. So when Sherb kicks up, he's just going to start with some really gentle weight shifting. He's not even picking up his hands off the ground, but for a lot of you might be comfortable enough to pick the hands up slightly or even go to that advanced kind of shoulder tap, and you can come down. And that's a really good checkpoint for you that says, like, oh, it turns out I can support my entire body weight on one shoulder in that stacked position, because that's what you need to do when you're handstand walking, even if it's just for a short period of time. Once we do that, now this is an intermediate step for maybe newer athletes still getting comfortable with this. If it's like this is pretty straightforward for you, then you can skip over it. But the next thing is I'm going to have Sherb kick up into a handstand hold, but he's going to be kind of at like an angle against the wall. So he's going to kick up with his hands a few feet away from the wall rather than really close. He's going to let his feet touch, and then he's going to walk himself into the wall. Good. He can kick down. Do a little bit further back this time. Okay, so now we can really see that the feet are out in front of him and he's moving his hands. So this drill serves two purposes. One is to get the athlete comfortable moving forward, but also to understand the idea of that the feet being out kind of over and in front of the hands is a necessary element of the handstand walk, because forward momentum is your friend. If you've practiced it out in the open and you find yourself kind of kicking up and then falling down, it's because you're not kicking hard enough to get forward momentum. So this drill enables that. Once you feel confident with that, kind of picking your hands up and moving forward, what we can do now is try to take a couple steps before our feet touch the wall. So Sherb's going to start, maybe he's going to put his hands right here. He's only going to get like 1 or 2 steps, and then his heels are going to bump into the wall. Boom. He's able to walk, and then he can kick down. Again, the nice thing there is that as long as he doesn't lose, just kind of panic and soften his elbows, his feet are going to run into the wall and he's going to be, safe, so to speak. So he feels comfortable, he can step back a little bit. Now he has to take a couple more steps before his feet bump into the wall and he can kick down. Now again, we can do this. You can go back as far as you want and before, taking as many steps as you need before you run into the wall. But this is where what I was saying before was like, don't let the wall turn into a crutch. Once you feel confident, you can take a few steps. The key now is to jump right into getting out in the open. So this can start as easily as just kicking up, trying to get, maybe a length of the mat first. But what we really want to make sure that we're doing here is still kicking up hard enough to get that forward momentum. You'll notice Sherb's feet are out in front of his hands, and that enables him to keep that forward momentum going, okay? Can you do one where you don't get your feet out in front of you, just so people understand? So if he doesn't kick his feet out, we kind of get that running wheelbarrow sort of thing, and that's where it's important to say, get your feet out in front of you, then you can start moving the hands. Now, bonus tip, if you're pretty proficient at handstand walking or you're getting used to it, we can start to add in a little bit more skill development here. And we're going to talk about the pirouette, so kind of a 180 turning and walking back in the other direction. When we're doing this pirouette, what we want to try to avoid is kind of like a U-turn, okay? Instead, we want kind of walking in a half circle. Instead, we want an in-place 180 as much as possible. And it's going to take you a little bit of practice figuring out like which hand moves in which direction and whatnot, but the key is that when you figure out which direction you are going to turn, which I think for you is left, right? So is to the left. We're going to pay attention to Sherb's left hand, and when he goes to make kind of that big pivot to turn around and walk in the other direction, you're going to notice that his left hand points in the direction that he wants to go. So it's the same, he's turning left, he's using his left hand as the pivot hand, and his left hand is pointing in the direction that he wants to go. So let's just try to turn around like right about here, so if you can. Okay, so that left hand there, he took 2 little steps to make sure that he could turn and pivot. There you go, turning that left hand again, and he's kind of making that pivot in place rather than kind of like a racetrack where he goes out and around in a really tight circle. Okay? All right, guys, so there you have it, the handstand walk kind of progression from 0 to all the way to a 180-degree pirouette. This is very much a neurological adaptation sort of exercise. That means it requires practice. The good news with this sort of thing is you can practice it pretty much every day, mix it into your warm-up, mix it into your skill work at the end of class, or you can also head to misfitathletics.com. We've got a weakness template that's dedicated exclusively to building in these progressions and just kind of forcing you to have a little piece of paper that says, yep, today is that day, today is this day, and hopefully in a couple weeks, I think it's 3 weeks long, you've got handstand walking under your belt and you're ready to roll. Give it a shot. We'll see you in the next one.